Rain was never gentle in the Arizona desert. When it came like a warning. Sheets of water slashing through darkness, wind tearing across the open sand as if trying to peel it from the earth itself. On nights like this, every creature sought shelter. Every creature except the ones who were brought in too late. Dr. Grace Miller stood beneath the dim surgical lamp of Sun Valley Rescue Ranch, her gloves dripping with rainwater and adrenaline. 2 officers had rushed in minutes earlier carrying a limp lioness, her ribs shattered from a roadside crash involving an illegal wildlife transport van. Grace had seen her share of tragedies in 20 years of emergency medicine, but something in the lioness's eyes, half open, glazed, still fighting, made this night feel different, more urgent, more fragile. The lioness's pulse fluttered weakly under Grace's palm. The monitors beeped in a rhythm that was slowing by the second. Thunder cracked outside, rattling the old tin roof. Grace stabilized the abdomen just in time to feel a faint movement beneath her fingers. A cub. She acted on instinct, a quick incision, a careful pull, a moment of breathless hope. Then a tiny, slick, shivering body slid into her hands. No bigger than a loaf of bread, no mother's heartbeat to steady him, no warmth except Grace's trembling palms. The lioness exhaled one last time. The monitors flatlined. Grace didn't have the luxury to mourn. She rubbed the cub's chest, cleared his airway, whispered encouragement like he was a newborn child and not a predator destined to outgrow them all. After a few agonizing seconds, he made a sound, a frail, rasping mewl that barely rose above the storm outside. He was alive, for now. But she knew the truth experienced veterinarians never sugarcoated. Without colostrum, the nutrient-rich first milk, his immune system would collapse within hours. No formula could replace what nature intended. And Sun Valley had no lioness to nurse him. Not tonight, not ever. Lightning flashed through the clinic window, illuminating his thin ribs and trembling limbs. "You're fighting," Grace whispered. "I'll fight too." Her assistant, Mark, peeked in, coat soaked through. "Grace, Daisy just finished whelping. 6 puppies. One of them is small, real small." For a moment, Grace didn't answer. The idea was reckless, risky, borderline unthinkable. Pairing a newborn lion with a nursing dog? Every book said no. Every case study said impossible. Every instinct in her head shouted danger. But the cub's tiny claws curled around her finger, and something shifted inside her. Sometimes survival wasn't about rules. Sometimes it was about trying the one thing everyone else was too afraid to attempt. "Prepare Daisy's room," she said, her voice steadying. "We're going to try." Mark froze. "Grace, are you sure?" "No," she admitted. "But he won't survive the night if we don't." The power flickered. The cub whimpered. And in that small, flickering silence, Grace thought about all the people who followed Whispering Hearts, the gentle community who believed in second chances, in healing, in the impossible bonds that saved lives when science alone couldn't. If any story deserved to be shared with them, it was this one. If any night could remind someone out there that compassion still mattered, it was this storm-soaked evening in the desert. She held the cub closer. "If you're watching this later," she murmured, as if speaking to future viewers, "don't forget to subscribe to Whispering Hearts. Stories like his, they remind us why hope is worth keeping." Grace wrapped the cub in a warm towel. "Let's get you to Daisy," she whispered, "and let's pray she sees what I see in you." The storm howled as she stepped into the hall, its roar chasing her all the way to the wooden cabin where a mother dog and 6 newborn puppies waited. Somewhere beyond the thunder, beyond the fear, beyond the thin line between life and death, destiny was shifting, and the desert night, for just a breath, seemed to hold still. The rain softened as Grace crossed the yard toward the small wooden cabin where Daisy was recovering with her newborn litter. The desert smelled of wet earth and juniper, the kind of rare scent that only came after a storm had bruised the sky. Grace held the lion cub close, feeling the faint tremble in his belly, each breath a reminder that time was slipping through her fingers. Inside the cabin, the light was warm and low. Zoe, the 16-year-old volunteer who practically lived at the ranch every weekend, sat beside Daisy's bedding. Her hair was tied up messily, and her sweatshirt was covered in puppy paw prints and formula stains. She looked up the minute Grace entered, eyes widening at the sight of the tiny, fragile cub nestled against the towel. "Oh my gosh, is that—" "A lion cub," Grace answered quietly. "He lost his mother tonight." Zoe's hands flew to her mouth. Daisy saw them both and lifted her head, tail thumping weakly against the blankets. The Labrador mix had the kind of eyes that made strangers feel like family, warm, steady, endlessly patient. 6 puppies squirmed at her belly, tiny bodies bumping against one another as they nursed with sleepy determination. But one, the smallest, had already finished. He lay curled against Daisy's foreleg, breathing softly, his fur a lighter shade of gold than the others. Buddy. Grace had always believed some animals arrived in this world with a gentleness that didn't fit their bodies. Buddy was that kind of soul. Zoe whispered, "Is he okay?" Grace shook her head. "Not unless Daisy helps him. He needs colostrum tonight, or we'll lose him by morning." The storm grumbled faintly outside, as if to remind them that the world wasn't going to pause while they decided what to do. Ethan appeared in the doorway, rain still dripping from his jacket. He didn't enter the room, just leaned against the frame, arms crossed tightly, expression torn between concern and caution. "Grace," he said, voice low, "this is risky. Daisy's never rejected anything, but this isn't a runt fox or an orphaned goat. This is a lion." Grace nodded. She expected the pushback. Ethan was practical, grounded, a behavior specialist who had seen good intentions end with tragedies. "I know," she replied gently, "but we don't have another option." Zoe looked between them, her eyes shining. "Let Daisy try," she said softly. "She'll know what to do. She always knows what to do." Grace knelt beside the bedding. Daisy sniffed the air, her nose twitching. The lion cub stirred, letting out a thin, wavering cry, too weak to sound like anything dangerous, too young to even know what fear was. Grace placed him carefully at the edge of the bedding, a few inches away from Daisy's paws. For a moment, the room felt suspended in time. Daisy went still. Her muscles tightened just slightly, eyes narrowing in instinctive caution. Ethan straightened, ready to intervene. Zoe gripped the bedside table. Grace held a breath. The cub whimpered again, and Daisy softened. She lowered her head and touched her nose to his. One soft sniff, then another. Her tail moved, barely at first, then with slow, reassuring taps against the blanket. She nudged him gently toward her belly, shifting her weight so he wouldn't roll onto the cold floor. With a patient sigh, she licked the side of his face, cleaning him with careful, motherly strokes. Zoe let out a shaky breath. Ethan's shoulders dropped an inch, tension draining. Grace felt her throat tighten with relief. The lion cub, now half buried in soft belly fur, made a small, desperate search for milk. Daisy shifted again, opening space for him exactly as she did for her own puppies. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by warmth and the rhythmic breath of new life, the impossible began to feel inevitable. Buddy, awakened by the movement, scooted toward the cub and pressed his tiny head against the newcomer's flank. No fear, no hesitation, just simple, instinctive acceptance. Grace watched them settle together, predator and pup, side by side, as if the universe had intended it all along. This, she whispered, might just work. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, leaving only the soft drip of rain from the cabin roof. Inside, Daisy curled her body protectively around her mixed litter. 6 puppies and a lion cub who had nowhere else in the world to belong. Life had thrown them all into the same fragile moment. What came next would test every boundary nature had ever drawn. But for this single night, under the soft glow of the cabin lamp, survival found a place to rest.
The cabin was quiet, except for the soft rustle of blankets and Daisy's steady breathing. Grace stayed kneeling beside the bedding, her hand hovering protectively near the newborn lion, as if she could will him to stay alive just a little longer. The cub, wet, fragile, barely steadier than a flickering candle, pressed closer to Daisy's warm belly, searching with instinct more than strength. His tiny mouth finally latched onto a teat, and the moment it did, Grace felt her own breath release in a shaky exhale. He was drinking. He was actually drinking. Zoe wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve, trying to pretend she hadn't been crying. Ethan, who had silently argued every step of this plan just an hour earlier, lowered himself onto a wooden stool as if whatever held him upright had finally given out. "Grace," he murmured, unable to look away. "I'll be damned." Daisy didn't stop at acceptance. She leaned in fully. She tucked her snout under the cub's side and pulled him closer, circling him with her front leg the way mother dogs shield their smallest pups. Her breathing shifted into the slow, rhythmic pattern she only used when settling in for the long watch of the night. 6 puppies nursed half asleep, and the lion cub joined them as if he had been meant to all along. Buddy, still groggy from his earlier nap, wiggled forward until his tiny head rested against the cub's back. The contrast was almost comical, the puppy's light golden fur against the cub's darker tawny coat, but they fit together as naturally as puzzle pieces. Grace watched Buddy nudge the cub gently, using the faint, warm pulse of his own body to steady the newcomer. "Look at that," Zoe whispered. "He already picked him." Grace didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because the truth of it struck deeper than she expected. Bonding wasn't always loud. Sometimes it began with a tiny weight leaning against you in the dark, accepting you without hesitation. Outside, the storm finally died, leaving the night washed clean. The desert quieted, as if the whole expanse of sand and sagebrush was listening. The roof ticked softly as the rain settled into stillness. A faint whimper broke the silence, not from fear, but from effort. The lion cub pushed his paws out clumsily, trying to secure himself against Daisy's warm side. He was too weak to hold himself steady, and just as he started to slide, Daisy repositioned again with a gentle grunt, trapping him safely between her chest and foreleg. She licked the top of his head with slow, deliberate strokes that had soothed countless orphaned animals at the ranch over the years. Zoe laughed quietly. She's already treating him better than her own puppies. But that wasn't true. Daisy treated them all the same. She always had. Whether goat, rabbit, fox kit, or puppy, Daisy's love never kept score. Tonight, it simply included one more soul. Grace studied the lion cub closely now that he'd stopped trembling. His breathing had steadied, his heartbeat no longer fluttered like a dying moth. The first milk was already working through him, those precious antibodies building their tiny fortress from the inside out. "He's drinking," she whispered. "A real one." Ethan didn't argue, he just nodded, a quiet surrender to the miracle unfolding inches from his boots. Buddy made a soft, squeaky noise and pressed closer to the cub, their sides rising and falling in mismatched rhythms that somehow found harmony. 2 newborns, worlds apart in nature, wrapped in the same warmth, sharing the same mother, breathing the same desert night air. Grace placed a gentle hand on Daisy's head. "You're something special, girl," she murmured. "You always have been." Daisy's tail thumped once, slow and content. Grace rose to her feet with care, her knees stiff from kneeling. She looked down at the unlikely family on the blanket, the lion cub who should not have survived, and the puppy who had already chosen him. Tonight, they belonged to each other. And Grace, watching from the doorway as the cabin light cast a glow over the intertwined newborns, knew the truth with a quiet certainty. Whatever happened next, whatever nature demanded or instinct tested, these two lives had been tied together from the moment Daisy lowered her head and chose to love something the world said she shouldn't.
Morning came slowly to Sun Valley, the kind of soft, honey-colored sunrise that turned the wet desert soil into a patchwork of gold. Inside the cabin, the storm's chaos felt like a distant memory. Daisy slept curled protectively around her small, mismatched family, her breathing deep and steady. But what caught Grace's attention wasn't Daisy's calm, it was how two tiny bodies were pressed together so closely it was hard to tell where one began and the other ended. Leo, the lion cub who had arrived on death's doorstep just hours earlier, now slept with his head draped over Buddy's back. Buddy, though smaller and clearly more fragile than his siblings, had nestled himself squarely against Leo's chest, as if he had appointed himself guardian of the stranger beside him. Even in sleep, Buddy twitched whenever Leo stirred, adjusting himself so the cub wouldn't lose warmth or balance. Grace stood quietly at the threshold, arms crossed, her breath warming the morning air. She'd seen imprinting in many species, goats bonding with dogs, orphaned fawns following volunteers like mothers, but this was different. Bonding usually required days, sometimes weeks. What she was looking at now had taken less than a night. Zoe patted in, still in pajamas, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. When she spotted the pair, she froze, then smiled the soft kind of smile people made when something touched them before they had time to think. "They're stuck together like magnets," she whispered. Grace nodded. "They are, and not just physically." Buddy woke first. He blinked up at Zoe, gave a tiny puppy yawn, then immediately looked down at Leo as if to confirm the cub was still there. When Buddy saw Leo hadn't moved, he licked the cub's ear, a small, clumsy gesture, but the kind that said in its own wordless way, "I'm here. I'm right here." Leo woke with a startled little jerk, then instinctively pressed into Buddy's side as if searching for the one familiar anchor he'd known in a night filled with confusion. Daisy, sensing the shift, lifted her head and nosed the two closer, her maternal instincts knitting the tiny pair into her circle without hesitation. Ethan stepped in with a clipboard, ready to document progress, though his skeptical expression from the night before had softened. He crouched beside Grace, studying the newborns. "I've seen imprinting between canines and goats, but a lion cub this fast?" Grace replied, "Nature's not following her own rules today." Buddy suddenly attempted to mimic Leo's stretching, paws forward, back arched, but his puppy body wasn't built for such feline grace. He toppled sideways into Leo's belly, making the cub release a surprised squeak. Leo, not to be outdone, attempted to mimic Buddy's high-pitched puppy squeal. What came out was a strange, breathy rasp that made Daisy lift an eyebrow and Zoe burst into a stifled laugh. "Oh, they're going to be trouble," Zoe said. Grace allowed herself a rare smile. Good trouble. The two newborns continued their little dance of mimicry, Buddy trying to stalk like a lion, Leo trying to vocalize like a puppy. Tiny attempts, wobbly limbs, movements that made Daisy sigh in long-suffering affection. The entire scene radiated something warm and ancient, something older than instinct, older than species. It was connection, pure connection. Zoe pulled out her phone and whispered, "I'm just going to film a bit for the ranch updates." Grace didn't object. A moment like this deserved to be remembered. Later, that short clip would spread online, the kind of soft, heartwarming moment that offered comfort to people scrolling through a noisy world. But for now, the magic stayed in the cabin. Buddy nudged Leo again and rested his tiny head on the cub's shoulder. Leo pressed his face into Buddy's fur.
The two newborns let out synchronized sighs before drifting back to sleep. Ethan closed his clipboard gently. "Grace, whatever this is, it's not temporary. They're imprinting in real time." Grace didn't look away from the pair. "I know," she said quietly, "and we'll need to be ready for what that means." Zoe sat beside Daisy, lightly stroking her head. "If they grow up together, maybe they'll teach each other how to be brave." Grace didn't reply, but she hoped, deeply silently, that Zoe was right, because the world outside this cabin was big, complicated, and often unforgiving. And two tiny creatures bound by a storm in a night of shared survival would soon have to face challenges neither of them could imagine. But not today. Today, under the warm cabin lamp, they were simply two newborns who had found each other in the dark.
The first weeks in the cabin passed like a string of quiet miracles. Leo grew stronger each day, his breathing steadier, his paws surer, his voice louder. Buddy, though still the smallest of the litter, never left his side. If Leo shifted, Buddy shifted. If Leo whimpered, Buddy pressed closer. And Daisy, patient, wise, endlessly gentle, watched over them both with the quiet authority of a mother who had raised more than just puppies in her lifetime. But as Leo's strength returned, so did the instincts woven into his bones. Even as a cub, his paws were heavier, his movements bolder. He didn't mean to overwhelm anyone. He was still too young to understand what he was becoming, but his natural lion-like way of playing brought a new kind of energy into the small cabin. The first sign came one morning when the puppies were tumbling over each other in a warm heap. Buddy rolled toward Leo, tail wagging, expecting the clumsy nuzzle they always shared. Leo responded with a playful pounce, gentle by lion standards, but just a little too forceful for a tiny Labrador mix puppy. Buddy squeaked, surprised, and Leo froze, unsure of what he'd done wrong. Before any human could step in, Daisy lifted her head and rose with that slow, deliberate movement dogs use when they're about to correct their young. She walked between the two newborns, placing her front paw gently, firmly on Leo's shoulder. It wasn't a punishment, it was a lesson. Leo stilled immediately, watching her with wide amber eyes. "That's her way of saying, 'too rough,'" Ethan murmured from the doorway. Grace nodded. "She's setting the rules." And Daisy did set them, every day, with remarkable precision. When Leo bit too hard, Daisy nudged his muzzle upward, forcing him to release. When Buddy grew too excited and jumped on Leo's face with his clumsy puppy paws, Daisy nudged him down too, reminding him there were limits on both sides. It wasn't favoritism, it was fairness. Her calm insistence on balance created a space where danger softened into play, and instinct shaped itself around gentleness. Buddy learned quickly. Whenever Daisy corrected Leo, Buddy would trot over and lick Leo's cheek, as if reassuring him, "It's okay, we're still friends." And Leo, for all his future strength, seemed humbled by Daisy's guidance. He watched her closely, mimicking her posture, her patience, even her pauses. It was as though Daisy was teaching him how to be something lions were never required to be: careful. By the time the pups reached a month old, meal times had become their own ritual. Daisy would settle herself between two feeding spots: raw meat for Leo, softened kibble for the puppies. Buddy always finished first, but he wouldn't cross the invisible line Daisy guarded. Instead, he would sit facing Leo, waiting until Leo's meal was done before moving again. It wasn't obedience, it was companionship shaped into routine. Zoe watched these scenes unfold with the quiet wonder adults often forget. One afternoon, she sat on the floor beside them, sketching the way Leo curled around Buddy, how Daisy hovered like a warm cloud over the pair. Without looking up, she whispered, "She's raising them like they're brothers, not like they're different." Grace glanced over her shoulder, and maybe that's exactly what they're becoming.
There were moments, small ones, but unmistakable, when instinct brushed against vulnerability. When Leo would test his growing jaws or swipe a paw through the air with more force than he intended. In those moments, Daisy always intervened with a gentle growl or a firm nudge, and Leo always listened. He never challenged her. Daisy wasn't just a mother, she was a compass. As the weeks passed, Buddy became bolder. He started tumbling headfirst toward Leo before Leo could pounce first. Their games grew sillier, their naps grew longer, their bond grew deeper. And Daisy watched it all, not as a guard, not as a referee, but as the teacher both of them needed. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the cabin glowed with the soft orange of late daylight, Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Grace," he said quietly, "I've seen trained dogs redirect wolf pups. I've seen goats imprint on shepherd dogs, but I've never seen a dog teach a lion how to play nice." Grace didn't take her eyes off the pair curled together in the blankets. Leo's paw draped awkwardly over Buddy's tiny back. "Daisy's rewriting the rules," she replied softly. Ethan nodded slowly. "And they're learning them." Daisy nudged her nose into Leo's fur, then shifted to pull Buddy closer, gathering them both with a gentle exhale. It was a gesture that belonged neither to species nor instinct. It belonged to love. Outside, the desert wind softened across the sand. Inside, under the wooden beams and warm lamplight, a lion cub and a puppy slept side by side, held together not just by survival, but by the rules of a mother who saw no difference between them.
By the time Leo reached 3 months old, word of the lion raised by a dog had traveled far beyond Sun Valley's dusty fences. What began as a single heartwarming clip Zoe posted on the ranch's update page quietly turned into a small wildfire, shared by animal lovers, then local stations, then a handful of national blogs. Leo and Buddy, tangled together in sleep or chasing each other through the puppy yard, were no longer just ranch residents. They were a story. And stories had a way of attracting attention, good and bad. Grace felt the shift long before the phone calls started. Visitors lingered longer near the cabin. Volunteers whispered about sponsorship opportunities. And donors, those who kept the ranch's lights on, began to ask for updates with a tone that suggested more interest in publicity than animal welfare. One morning, as Grace reviewed medication charts, the ranch director, Martha Sullivan, walked in with a folder tucked under her arm. Martha was a practical woman, always dressed in denim and dust, but today her tight expression hinted at something heavier. "Grace, we need to talk," she said. Grace closed the notebook. "What's going on?" Martha set the folder down. Logos from a conservation organization decorated the front, the kind that usually helped with funding and regulations. Today, the name looked more like a warning label. "They've been watching the videos, and they've sent concerns, strong ones." She hesitated, lowering her voice. "They think Leo's imprinting is unnatural." Grace exhaled slowly. She had expected skepticism, but pressure at this level came with weight. Before she could reply, Ethan stepped into the office as if he had been listening from the hall, because he had. "They're not wrong," he said. "Raising a lion this way goes against every protocol. At 6 months, he'll be strong enough to hurt someone without meaning to." Martha nodded. "They want us to prepare for separation. By the time Leo turns 6 months, he needs to be moved into regulated species-specific housing. No more mixed environment rearing." Grace stiffened. 6 months? That's barely anything. They're bonded. Daisy's still teaching him. Buddy is his anchor. That's exactly the problem. He thinks Buddy is his species. That's dangerous for both of them. Grace looked at him, surprised at the sharpness in his tone. Ethan wasn't cold-hearted. He cared deeply for every creature on the ranch.
but he carried the weight of too many accidents, too many unforeseen incidents that turned into scars on his conscience. Zoe burst into the doorway then, hugging a stack of dog blankets to her chest. Her eyes were wide, already wet. "You're not really thinking about separating them, are you?" Martha softened. "Honey, this isn't something we want. It's something we are being told." Zoe shook her head fiercely. "But they're brothers. They sleep together. Buddy won't even drink water unless Leo comes over and sniffs the bowl first. They're family." Grace rubbed her temples. She admired Zoe's heart. She also feared what that heart would feel in 3 months' time. "They're still wild animals, Zoe," Ethan said gently. "Leo's instincts will grow whether we want them to or not." Zoe's voice cracked. "Then teach him. Don't tear him away." Grace turned toward the window where the afternoon sunlight spilled onto the yard. Outside, Buddy and Leo were attempting another one of their mismatched games, Buddy bouncing with clumsy enthusiasm, Leo stalking with exaggerated caution, both trying to imitate the other. It should have looked absurd. Instead, it looked like trust. A deep, painful ache settled in Grace's chest. "We'll monitor their development," she said quietly. "Document everything. But I'm not making any final decisions today." Martha sighed, but nodded. "We have until his 6-month check. After that, the board will expect a plan." The room fell silent. Zoe hugged the blankets tighter. "I'm not giving up on them," she whispered. Grace met her eyes. "Neither am I." But even as she spoke the words, she felt the world outside closing in. Rules, regulations, expectations. And somewhere inside that pressure, she sensed the beginning of a fight she wasn't sure she could win. Outside the window, Leo pounced too hard and Buddy yelped. Daisy stepped in between them with a firm nudge, restoring calm before the moment tipped into danger. Grace watched them, a knot forming in her throat. The world didn't understand what was happening in that dusty yard, but she did. They were trying, clumsy and imperfect, to build a family in a world determined to pull them apart. By month 4, the small cabin that once felt spacious began to buzz with noise, movement, and the unmistakable chaos of 2 growing boys, one with paws too big for his body, and the other with strength developing faster than anyone was ready for. Leo's muscles were starting to firm beneath his tawny coat, his coordination sharpening with each passing day. Buddy, still half his size, compensated with boundless enthusiasm. And Daisy, whose joints were beginning to show the slow stiffness of age, became less of a referee and more of a quiet supervisor, watching with patient eyes as her 2 unusual sons invented a world of their own. It was during this time that the first hints of a shared language began to appear. It started with sound. Leo's attempts to mimic Buddy's bark had grown louder but no less strange, something between a grunt, a chirp, and a low rumble. It made volunteers stop mid-step and turn their heads, unsure whether they'd heard a dog trying to roar or a lion trying to bark. Buddy, never one to be outdone, began copying Leo's soft, throaty chuffs. His sounded more like a squeaky toy caught in a windstorm, but Leo responded every time as if the pup had spoken flawless lion. Grace noticed it first when she entered the yard early one morning. Leo stood near the fence line, staring intently at a butterfly drifting above a clump of sagebrush. He made a gentle chuff, a curious, questioning sound. Buddy trotted up beside him, copied the chuff as best he could, and nudged Leo's shoulder. Leo nudged back. Then both sat together, watching the butterfly like 2 toddlers fascinated by the same flicker of color. "They're talking," Zoe whispered behind Grace, awe spreading across her face. Grace nodded. Their own dialect. But it wasn't just sound. Their bodies began to mirror each other too. Leo learned restraint, rare for a lion cub his age. When he pounced, he curved his claws inward, tapping instead of grabbing. When he wrestled,
He rolled his weight, distributing it instead of slamming down. Each adjustment didn't come naturally. It came from watching Daisy, from reading Buddy's reactions, from choosing gentleness again and again. Buddy learned boldness. When Leo crouched low in a stalking stance, Buddy mimicked it, only to wobble and fall nose first into the dirt. When Leo scaled the climbing post with feline confidence, Buddy tried too, scrambling halfway up before sliding back down in a noisy heap. Leo would chirp in his deepening cub voice and hop down to nudge Buddy back to his feet. "They balance each other," Ethan admitted one afternoon as he leaned against the fence, arms crossed. "Buddy keeps Leo soft, and Leo gives Buddy courage." Grace glanced at him, surprised. Ethan hadn't openly admitted his growing respect for their bond. Not until now. Maybe he couldn't deny what was unfolding before his eyes. But just as the boys grew closer, Daisy began to step back. She still watched them, always, but she no longer inserted herself into every tumble or chase. Her gaze had shifted from mother to mentor, letting her sons test the world with fewer boundaries. And with Daisy's retreat came a new layer of independence that made the staff both proud and nervous. One afternoon, the ranch volunteers gathered to watch Buddy and Leo attempt a new game Leo invented. He would tap Buddy's shoulder, run 10 feet, and stop abruptly, glancing back with a low chuff. Buddy understood instantly. He bounded after Leo, ears flopping wildly. But just as he reached him, Leo darted sideways with feline speed, leaving Buddy spinning in a confused circle before yapping in mock indignation. The volunteers laughed. Leo chuffed again, Buddy barked, and just like that, a new rule of their shared game emerged. Leo would always be faster, but Buddy would always keep trying. It might have stayed a perfect moment if not for what happened next. A sudden noise, a metal gate slamming shut across the yard, echoed sharply. Buddy startled, but Leo reacted instantly. His muscles tensed, his ears flattened. A low, unfamiliar rumble escaped his throat. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was instinct. Raw, unfiltered instinct. Grace moved before anyone else, stepping into the yard with calm, steady confidence. "Easy, Leo," she said softly. "Nothing's wrong." Buddy, as if sensing the shift, pressed himself against Leo's side. His tiny body trembled, but he didn't back away. He nudged Leo's chin once, twice, soft reminders of who he was, of who they were. Leo blinked, the moment passing like a shadow pulled from the ground. His body relaxed, the rumble ceased. He lowered his head and nudged Buddy back. But for Grace, the moment didn't fade. She exchanged a glance with Ethan across the yard, one filled with the weight of what they had been warned about. Instinct wasn't gone, it was simply sleeping, and they all knew it wouldn't stay sleeping forever. Yet as the two boys curled together in the shade afterwards, Leo wrapping a gentle paw around Buddy like a protective older brother, Grace couldn't help but believe something just as powerful as instinct was growing between them. A language born from choosing each other. Every day, every moment.
By the time Leo reached 5 months old, his cub fat had melted into lean muscle. His paws, once comically oversized, now landed with a quiet, confident weight. Buddy, still smaller but sturdy in his own right, shadowed him everywhere, trotting alongside him with the stubborn loyalty only a dog could possess. Their bond had deepened into something wordless and instinctive, a connection no one had expected and no rulebook could explain. But with growth came new challenges, and the first real threat arrived one cool evening in late spring. The sun had dipped behind the desert hills, leaving streaks of rose and amber across the sky. The boys were outside in the larger training yard, one recently reinforced with higher fencing and double-gated entry. Daisy rested nearby, her breathing slow, her face wise with a kind of watchful nostalgia. She no longer chased after the boys or correct every rough tumble.
Her hips ached too much, and her steps had slowed. Still, her presence anchored the yard. Grace and Ethan stood by the gate, logging weights and behavior notes. For now, Leo and Buddy were wrestling near a low boulder. Buddy barked playfully, darting left and right. Leo followed with exaggerated slowness, pretending he couldn't catch the puppy, even though everyone watching knew he easily could. "Look at them," Zoe murmured from the bench. "They think they're the same." Grace smiled softly. In their world, they are. But the ranch around them was not always so gentle. A sudden metallic scrape echoed across the yard, the outer service gate slamming against its post. A visiting technician had left it unsecured. The sound wasn't loud, but the echo bounced sharply off the metal siding. Leo's reaction was instant and unlike anything they'd seen before. His head snapped up, his ears flattened, his muscles coiled as a deep, instinctive growl vibrated from his chest. Not the confused rumble from the gate incident weeks earlier. This was raw, primal, a flash of the predator buried beneath months of gentle play and shared naps. Buddy froze. His tiny tail stopped mid-wag, his head tilted, eyes wide, not with fear, but confusion. He'd never heard Leo make a sound like that, not directed at him, but not directed at him either. It cut through the air like a warning neither of them understood yet. Before Grace could move, Leo stepped forward, large, deliberate steps, placing himself between Buddy and the sound. His body shielded the puppy completely, but his stance radiated danger in the way only a wild animal could express. "Grace," Ethan said sharply, "we need to intervene." But Grace held up a hand. "Wait." Daisy, slow but determined, pushed herself to her feet. She walked toward Leo, her limp prominent, her face calm. She made a single low woof, a mother's voice, steady and absolute. Leo's ears twitched. Another woof, firmer. Leo blinked. The growl softened, his tail lowered, his breathing eased, but his body was still trembling, caught between instinct and the world he had been raised in. Buddy, sensing the shift, nudged Leo's back leg gently, one tiny touch that said, "I'm here." It broke the tension like sunlight through cloud. Leo exhaled sharply, then lowered his head to nuzzle Buddy's ear. The deep growl vanished as quickly as it had come, replaced by a soft chuff. Buddy licked Leo's chin, tail slowly resuming its wag. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That could have gone differently. Grace nodded. Instinct will come back, maybe stronger next time. Zoe swallowed hard. But he protected Buddy. He didn't go after him. And that was true. Even in fear, even in instinct, Leo had placed himself in front of Buddy, not behind him, protecting, not threatening. Still, Grace felt the warning settle deep in her chest. This was only the beginning. As the sun slipped fully behind the hills, casting long shadows across the yard, Daisy settled between her boys again. Leo rested his head on her side, Buddy curled against Leo's belly. 3 bodies, touching, breathing in sync. Grace watched them through the chain-link fence, heart heavy with a truth she wished she could ignore. Love could bend instinct, but no one yet knew if it could break it.
By early summer, Leo and Buddy had fallen into a rhythm the ranch staff could set their watches by. They woke together, ate together, explored the yard together. If Leo napped in the shade, Buddy slept draped across his front legs. If Buddy wandered off to sniff tumbleweeds or chase grasshoppers, Leo followed at a slow trot until he could place a protective paw on the pup's back. Their bond was no longer something fragile or forming, it was absolute, which made what happened next all the more heartbreaking. The State Conservation Board arrived on a bright Tuesday morning, 2 SUVs pulling into the gravel lot, the kind that made Ethan curse under his breath the moment he saw them. Officials stepped out with clipboards and concerned expressions. Their visit had been scheduled, but no one at Sun Valley believed it would be simple. Grace greeted them outside the cabin, shoulders tense beneath her denim jacket. "We've documented everything," she said. "Leo's progress, his training, his physical therapy, his behavioral patterns." "That's why we're here," replied Dr. Madeline Shore, the board's senior wildlife specialist. Her voice was polite but crisp, the kind that left no room for negotiation. Zoe stood a few steps behind Grace, fists gripping the hem of her shirt. Ethan walked out with a resigned look. "You want to see the yard," he said to Grace, quietly. Grace exhaled, but nodded. "Let them." The moment the officials entered the training yard, Buddy bounded toward them with his typical friendliness, ears flopping, tail wagging, tongue lolling happily. Leo followed at a slower trot, head held high, steps measured. He wasn't aggressive, just assessing. He had grown large enough that even a curious glance from him could make an unprepared stranger stiffen up. And the officials were not prepared. "Oh my," one whispered, stepping back as Leo approached. But Leo didn't go toward them. He stopped beside Buddy and touched his nose to his puppy's back. Their greeting, their silent check-in, the ritual that anchored them both. Dr. Shore observed sharply. "Is he always this close to the dog?" Grace nodded. "Nearly always." That's exactly the concern. Buddy tilted his head at the strangers, sensing the unease. Leo pressed closer, almost shoulder to shoulder with him, eyes locked on the unfamiliar faces. Dr. Shore murmured something to her colleague. The colleague wrote furiously. Then came the sentence Grace had feared for months. "The lion cub will need to begin separation training within 2 weeks." Zoe gasped. No, you can't take him away from Buddy. They'll panic." Dr. Shore softened slightly. "I understand this is emotional." "No, it's not emotional, it's cruel." Ethan placed a calming hand on her shoulder, though his jaw was clenched. "What exactly do you expect the separation to look like?" Shore lifted her clipboard. "Leo will transition to a species-appropriate enclosure, limited contact with the dog, controlled exposure. Eventually, full separation." "Eventually," Grace repeated, voice barely steady. "Yes, by 7 months of age, they must be housed entirely apart. It's for safety." Grace looked across the yard, where Leo and Buddy sat pressed together in the dust, staring at the humans who spoke like the two of them weren't even there. She felt something twist deep inside her, a mix of anger, dread, and helplessness. "You're asking us to break his entire world," she whispered. Dr. Shore sighed. "Or prevent a tragic one." That night, after the officials left, the ranch felt unnaturally quiet. Daisy slept in her corner bed, her breathing soft but weighted by age. Buddy curled tightly against Leo as though trying to melt into him. Leo rested his head on the puppy's back, his eyes open, watching the door. Grace stood in the dim hallway, unseen, listening to the soft chuff Leo gave whenever Buddy shifted in sleep. A reassuring sound, a promise. "I'm here. I won't leave." Tears gathered in Grace's eyes despite her efforts to blink them away. Ethan joined her, leaning against the wall. "We knew this was coming. That doesn't make it right." "No," he admitted softly, "but we have to prepare, for both their sakes." Grace watched the two boys sleeping in a tangled heap of fur and warmth. "How do you prepare a heart for something like this?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. Somewhere in the room, Buddy whimpered in his sleep. Leo responded instantly, lifting his head, licking the pup between the ears until the whimper quieted. Then he lowered his head and wrapped a paw around Buddy's tiny body, pulling him close, as if shielding him from something only he could sense. Grace pressed a hand to her mouth, because she finally understood. Leo knew. Maybe not the words, maybe not the rules, but he felt the change in the air. An instant or not, he was afraid. The separation began quietly, without fences, without cages, without anything that looked dramatic from the outside. But inside the cabin, inside the hearts of two growing boys, everything shifted the moment the staff installed the first barrier. It wasn't even a full wall, just a temporary gate, 4 feet tall, made of reinforced metal bars placed in the main room to divide Leo's sleeping space from Buddy's, the kind used for large breed dogs during training. But this wasn't a training gate. It was the first fracture in a world that had always been whole. Buddy didn't understand. When Zoe carried him into the left side of the cabin and set him gently onto a pile of blankets, his tail wagged at first. He thought it was a game. He chirped his odd dog-lion hybrid sound, something he'd learned from Leo, and waited for his brother to bound toward him. Leo didn't bound. He pushed his head against the gate, hard. Not aggressively, not violently, just desperately, as though the thin metal was a mistake he could correct with enough pressure. His amber eyes tracked Buddy's every movement, confusion turning to distress. Buddy barked once, high-pitched, anxious, then pawed at the bars. He pressed his small face through as far as it would go, trying to reach Leo's fur. Leo lowered his massive head and pushed his nose through from the other side, making a soft, shaky chuff. Zoe covered her mouth with both hands. He thinks Buddy is being punished. Grace knelt beside Leo. "Easy, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking the cub's neck. His muscles trembled beneath her fingers. "You're okay. He's right there." But Leo didn't care about right there. He cared about touch. In their language, touch was the first word. Separation was something they had no translation for. Ethan stepped into the cabin, clipboard in hand, but posture tense. "He'll only keep the gate up for 15 minutes today," he said softly, "just enough to observe their stress levels." Zoe rounded on him, eyes red. "Their stress levels? Ethan, Leo is shaking." "I know," he said, voice low, "but we don't have a choice." Grace stayed quiet. She knew the state board would demand data, and data required controlled separation, even if it shattered the two creatures she'd helped bring together. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Leo paced the length of the gate 3 times, then pressed his side against it, trying to align his body with Buddy's. Buddy mirrored him perfectly on the other side, the bars separating them like a shadow that didn't belong. Daisy watched from her bed, her cloudy eyes following every movement. When Buddy let out a mournful whine, Daisy struggled to her feet, a slow, painful rise. She nudged the gate with her nose, then licked both boys through the bars, one at a time. It was her way of saying, "I see you, I'm here." But even Daisy couldn't change steel. At minute 14, Buddy began to panic. He pawed at the gate harder, whimpering, his little muscles trembling with more emotion than strength. Leo crouched low, chuffed softly, licking Buddy's paws through the bars. But when Buddy tried to crawl underneath, his instinct to join, to reunite, to belong, Leo let out a sound Grace had never heard. A roar. Not full-grown, not bone-deep, not the thunder of a lion king, but a cub's roar, raw and desperate, a sound pulled from instinctual fear and complete helplessness. The kind of sound nature reserves for separation, loss, or danger. Zoe burst into tears. Grace stood so quickly the chair behind her tipped over. "That's enough, we're done." Ethan didn't argue. He unlocked the gate with shaking hands. And the moment the latch clicked, Leo shoved it open with his shoulder. Not roughly, but urgently, and Buddy launched into him. They collided in a tangle of fur and relief, paws scrambling, noses nudging, tails wagging, bodies pressed tightly together.
Leo placed his entire head over Buddy's back, pulling him close in the way lions shield younger cubs. Buddy stood beneath him, still trembling, licking his chin over and over as if afraid he might disappear again. Daisy eased herself down beside them, curling her tired body around both boys, forming the same protective crescent she had made on their first night together. The three of them touched, heads, paws, shoulders, breathing in sync until the shaking stopped. "They can't handle it," Zoe whispered. "You saw that." Grace swallowed hard. "Yes, I did." Ethan stared at his clipboard, but he didn't write a single note. Because how do you measure heartbreak? How do you quantify a bond that defied instinct? How do you record the sound of a lion cub not roaring from aggression, but from grief? As the sun set outside the cabin, painting the desert in soft purple light, the three huddled shapes stayed entwined on the floor. Mother, lion, and dog, holding tightly to the only world they knew. Grace watched them and realized this was no longer about policy or safety plans or state regulations. This was about two souls who had learned to breathe as one, and pulling them apart might save bodies, but destroy hearts.
Summer deepened over the Arizona desert, turning the sand a pale gold by day and cooling it to soft silver at night. Leo was now 6 months old, sleek, strong, and undeniably a lion. Even his play carried more weight, more momentum. Buddy, barely half his size now, didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he noticed and simply didn't care. To Buddy, Leo was still the cub who cried in the storm, still the brother who curled around him each night, still the warm body he pressed against whenever Daisy's old bones needed rest. But instincts don't wait for permission. They arrive quietly, like a shadow growing longer at dusk. Grace saw the first sign during a morning play session. Leo pounced on a rubber training ball, crushing it with a single swipe of his paw. The ball didn't stand a chance. No toy could withstand a lion's developing strength. Buddy barked excitedly and pranced toward the remains. "Easy, Buddy," Grace cautioned. But Buddy didn't listen. He never did when Leo was excited. He darted forward, tail wagging happily. Leo turned toward him, eyes bright, body charged with the lingering thrill of the pounce. And for the first time, Grace saw something flicker across Leo's face. Something primal. Something ancient. Something lions aren't taught. They're born knowing. It disappeared in a heartbeat, replaced by familiar affection. Leo nudged Buddy gently. Buddy licked his chin. But Grace's stomach tightened. She'd seen it. A flash of instinct. Still, the boys played on, side by side, unaware of the fear that had begun to coil around the adults. The real test came 2 weeks later. It was late afternoon. The sky glowed orange. Daisy rested in the shade, too tired these days to supervise from up close. Grace, Ethan, and Zoe stood near the fence, monitoring the play session with quiet caution. Buddy found one of the old tug ropes, frayed from months of their games, and held it in his mouth, tail whipping happily. He pranced toward Leo, inviting him to play. Leo chuffed and crouched low, tail swishing behind him. His eyes glowed with excitement. Zoe smiled. Here we go, their favorite game. Buddy tugged left. Leo tugged right. The rope stretched between them like a bridge made of trust. For a minute, it was perfect. Two brothers laughing in the only way animals know how. Dust kicked up around them. Buddy growled playfully. Leo let out short cub barks he'd learned long ago. Then it happened.
Buddy lost his grip. He stumbled forward. Leo, still in mid-pounce from the pole, reached instinctively, fast, powerful, reflexive. His paw caught Buddy across the shoulder. Not claws, not aggression, just velocity. But velocity was enough. Buddy yelped, a sharp, broken sound that snapped the world in half. Leo froze. Buddy stumbled backward, whimpering, his shoulder marked by a thin red line, not deep, not dangerous, but enough to shatter him with fear, enough to make him see, perhaps for the first time, that Leo was not just his brother. He was a lion. Leo's eyes widened, his breath hitched. He crouched low, inching toward Buddy with a soft, terrified chuff. He reached out, as if trying to check the wound, as if apologizing in the only language he knew. Buddy took one trembling step back. Leo stopped moving. The distance between them was only a few feet, but it felt like a canyon. "No," Zoe whispered. "No, no, no." Buddy whimpered again, not at Leo, at his own fear, at the confusion exploding inside him, at the betrayal his instinct screamed, even though his heart knew better. Leo backed away, 1 step, 2, 3. He lowered himself to the ground, chest touching the dirt, head bowed. A lion's apology. A cub surrendering. A brother begging forgiveness. But Buddy turned and walked toward Daisy instead, pressing his small body into her fur, trembling lightly. Daisy licked his head, but her eyes stayed locked on Leo, watchful, sad. Grace felt something inside her collapse, not because of the injury, not because of the fear, but because she saw recognition in Leo's eyes. He knew what he'd done. He knew what he could become. And for the first time, Leo was afraid of himself. Ethan exhaled slowly. "It's starting." Zoe dropped to her knees. "But they love each other. He didn't mean it." "I know," Grace whispered, "but instinct doesn't ask permission." Leo inched forward again, barely moving, desperate. He let out a soft chuff, then another, a sound filled with sorrow, fear, apology. Buddy looked back at him, his ears drooped, his tail tucked. His heart pulled one way, instinct pulled the other. Then Buddy whined, a small, heartbreaking sound, and turned away again. Leo lowered himself fully to the ground. His body shook, not with anger, but with grief. He pressed his face into the dirt and let out a sound none of them had ever heard from him before, a cub's sob. Grace turned away, tears filling her eyes. "This is what the board warned us about." Ethan swallowed hard. "But the board never saw this part." Grace nodded. "They never saw love fight instinct." In the fading light of the desert, Daisy curled around Buddy, shielding him. Leo stayed where he was, alone, unmoving, terrified of his own strength. And yet the distance between them, painful as it was, didn't feel permanent. It felt like the beginning of a storm they would have to survive, together, or not at all.
No one slept that night. Not Grace, not Ethan, not Zoe, and certainly not Leo. The cabin was quiet except for Daisy's slow, rhythmic breathing and Buddy's occasional whimpering as he slept fitfully beside her. The small cut on Buddy's shoulder had stopped bleeding hours earlier, but the emotional wound was still open, raw, confusing, frightening. Leo lay on the opposite side of the room, curled tightly against the far wall. His back was to everyone. His chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, as if he were afraid to move, afraid to exist, afraid to be anything more than a shadow in his own home. Every so often he let out a soft chuff, uncertain, apologetic. Then he'd go still again when Buddy didn't answer. The other puppies slept without worry, their world unchanged. But Leo's world had tilted off its axis. Grace sat near the cabin door, elbows on her knees, chin resting on folded hands. She had been watching Leo for over an hour, studying the way he held himself low, the way he refused to look at Buddy, the way guilt and fear seemed to press down on him like invisible chains. Ethan entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one beside her and kept the other in his hands. "He hasn't moved," Ethan said. Grace nodded. "He's terrified he'll hurt Buddy again." "That's the first step," Ethan murmured. "He understands the danger." Grace shook her head. "He understands too well. He's shutting down." A long silence rested between them. Outside the cabin, the desert wind whispered against the wooden walls, soft, cold, and lonely. After a while, Zoe emerged from Daisy's side, eyes swollen from crying. She knelt near Leo, careful not to get too close, her voice trembling. "Leo, sweetheart, it's okay," she whispered. "You didn't mean it." Leo didn't turn his head, but his ears lifted slightly. Zoe's voice cracked. "You love Buddy. He knows that. He just got scared, that's all." Leo closed his eyes tightly, muscles pulling taut. A tiny, broken sound escaped him, something between a cub's whine and a lion's suppressed cry. Grace held her heart crack open. Zoe extended a hand toward him, not to touch, just to let him know she was there. "Come back to us," she whispered. "Buddy needs you." But Leo stayed pressed against the wall, breathing shallowly, as if punishing himself for some instinct had done without permission. Hours passed. At around 2 in the morning, Buddy stirred awake. He blinked sleepily, then lifted his head to look around the cabin. His eyes landed on Leo, still curled in the same defeated position, and his ears drooped. Buddy rose slowly, wincing when his shoulder pulled. But Daisy tried to nudge him back down, but he gently pushed past her. The puppy limped across the room, 3 steps, pause, 3 more steps, until he reached the place where Leo lay. Leo didn't turn, didn't move, didn't breathe deeply enough to be resting. Buddy sniffed his brother's hind leg, tail tucked but wagging faintly. Leo's body trembled. Buddy took another step and then gently touched Leo's side with his nose, one soft press, the same gesture he always used to say, "I'm here." Leo finally turned his head just an inch, just enough for his amber eyes to meet Buddy's. The look that passed between them was wordless, but enormous. Confession, apology, forgiveness, fear, love, all taught in a language only the 2 of them spoke. Buddy whined softly and pressed his forehead against Leo's. Leo made a tiny chuff in response, shaky, fragile, but hopeful. Buddy nudged him again and then carefully, slowly, curled his small body against Leo's chest, resting exactly where he had always rested, as though nothing in the world had changed. But something had changed. The innocence of their bond had been cracked open.
Yet here Buddy was, choosing his brother again. Leo held completely still for several seconds, as if the world might shatter if he breathed too deeply. Then, trembling, he lowered his massive paw and placed it gently over Buddy's back, careful, controlled, protective. A silent vow. Grace pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. Zoe sank to the floor, tears falling freely now. Ethan exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. "They're choosing each other again," he whispered. Grace nodded. "But next time, the risk will be bigger." "Yeah," Ethan murmured. "But so will their understanding." The three humans watched as Leo bowed his head and began to carefully groom the top of Buddy's head, the same way he had done as a tiny cub. Buddy relaxed fully into him, letting out a contented little sigh, all fear forgotten in the warmth of his brother's touch. Daisy watched them with tired eyes, then lowered her head again, reassured. The cabin fell into a warm, quiet stillness, a stillness built not on innocence anymore, but on forgiveness. And as the first pale light of dawn crept across the cabin floor, Leo and Buddy slept together once more, closer than ever, yet changed forever.
The days following the longest night unfolded with a fragile stillness, as if the desert itself understood what had happened inside that cabin. The air felt softer, the staff spoke in quieter tones, and Leo, once bold, curious, unstoppable, moved with the tentative caution of someone afraid of his own shadow. Buddy stayed glued to Leo's side, but even he seemed changed. He watched his brother more carefully now, responding to every shift in Leo's body language. If Leo stiffened, Buddy softened. If Leo held still, Buddy touched him gently, urging him back into the world. Their bond had not broken, but it had grown a new layer, one shaped by awareness and choice instead of simple instinct. Daisy, old but wise, watched them both with the long-suffering patience of someone who has raised children through storms far more complicated than weather. Grace stepped into the yard on the fourth morning after the accident, clipboard in hand, but heart in her throat. She and Ethan had spent nearly every hour since the incident redesigning their training plan. More supervision, shorter play windows, more boundaries, but without losing the closeness that held the two boys together. Leo sat beneath the shade of the mesquite tree, his massive paws tucked under him. Buddy sat pressed against him, head resting on Leo's foreleg, as if ensuring Leo didn't drift too far into self-blame again. Zoe knelt beside them both. "Hey, big guy," she whispered to Leo. "You ready to try again today?" Leo lifted his head. His amber eyes found Buddy's first. Buddy nudged him encouragingly. Grace stepped closer. "We'll keep today slow," she said softly. "Just movement exercises. No wrestling, no tug games." Leo blinked, slow, obedient. Buddy's tail wagged once. Daisy hobbled toward them, taking her usual place a few feet away, her presence a quiet reminder of the rules of gentleness that had shaped them from the beginning. The morning sun cast long, warm shadows across the yard as Grace guided the session. Leo followed every instruction carefully, the way a child follows directions after breaking something precious. He walked beside Buddy, but at half speed. He lowered himself into a crouch gently, pausing before each movement. He avoided sudden pounces, avoided anything that might create force. Buddy noticed. And Buddy made a decision. Rather than waiting for Leo to become his old, confident self, Buddy adapted. He slowed down too. He nudged Leo's shoulder and crouched differently, less springy, more controlled. He demonstrated small, safe movements, as if showing Leo, "It's okay to move again. We can do this slowly." Leo chuffed softly. Buddy barked once, encouragement. Grace watched the exchange with awe. "He's teaching Leo how to play safe," she murmured to Ethan. Ethan nodded. "That's incredible. Dogs don't usually adjust their play style for larger animals." "No," Grace said quietly, "but brothers do." Zoe beamed. "They're learning each other again." As the days passed, something remarkable began to happen. Leo developed what Grace started calling the hesitation pause. Every time he moved toward Buddy, Leo would stop, just one heartbeat, to read Buddy's body language. If Buddy stiffened, Leo backed off. If Buddy wagged, he proceeded. If Buddy chirped their invented sound, a soft half-bark, half-chuff, they both eased into play with cautious joy. This new pause spread into every part of their shared life. At feeding time, Leo waited for Buddy to finish sniffing the bowls before he touched his own. During naps, Leo lowered himself slowly, ensuring Buddy wasn't beneath him. At grooming time, Leo licked Buddy gently, then waited for a response before continuing. It was communication, not instinct. It was care, not survival. It was love, not naivety. One afternoon, Zoe recorded a small moment on her phone. Leo lying on his side in the dust while Buddy pressed his head into Leo's mane, licking the place where Leo's guilt had lived for days. Leo responded by brushing Buddy's ears with his nose, chuffing quietly. The video lasted 10 seconds, but it was all heart. When Zoe uploaded it to the ranch's page, the reaction came fast. Thousands of comments, messages, shares. People didn't just see a lion and a dog. They saw forgiveness. They saw a second chance. They saw a bond, learning to breathe again. But behind the heartwarming moment lingered a truth that made Grace's chest tighten every time she looked at them. The state board's deadline wasn't going away. Leo's 7th month was approaching. Separation training would be mandatory, and no amount of tenderness could stop the rules from closing in. Still, tonight wasn't about the future. Tonight was about the soft sound of two brothers settling down together in the corner of the cabin. Buddy curled beneath Leo's chin, Leo resting a careful paw across Buddy's back. It was about a lion learning gentleness and a puppy learning strength. It was about silence healing wounds instinct had torn open. It was about love rediscovering its voice. And as Daisy watched them drift into sleep, she let out a long, contented sigh. Because tonight, trust had survived.
Spring warmed the desert in slow, deliberate breaths, softening the cold edges of winter and coaxing life back into the sand. By now, Leo and Buddy had rebuilt the fracture between them, but what emerged wasn't the same relationship they had before. It was deeper, more intentional, something shaped by knowledge rather than innocence. Grace saw it in the way Leo paused before every movement, in the way Buddy glanced up before initiating play, and in how Daisy positioned herself nearby, like the quiet guardian of a fragile treaty. But a new chapter was beginning, and this one didn't revolve around healing the past. It revolved around discovering how to live with their differences, safely, joyfully, and with increasing trust. On a warm morning streaked with golden light, Grace opened the yard gate to start a controlled play session. Buddy darted out first, tail wagging in broad circles, his energy finally back to full strength. Leo followed with a heavier stride, still gentle, still cautious, but with sparks of his old confidence flickering in the soft chuffs he made when the breeze brushed past his whiskers. Grace clicked her pen thoughtfully. "Let's observe today," she told Ethan. "They're ready for a challenge, but they'll show us which one." Buddy was the first to initiate the invitation dance, as Zoe called it. He lowered his front legs, stretched his paws forward, then gave a sharp little bark. Leo's ears perked. A moment later, he answered with a low, soft rumble. Not dominance, not warning, but the sound he had begun using exclusively for Buddy. Zoe leaned toward Grace. "That sound, it's not a full chuff." Grace nodded. "They're modifying each other, like building a middle dialect." And that was exactly what they were doing. Their play began slow and measured. Buddy darted forward. Leo stepped after him with exaggerated care. Buddy circled. Leo mirrored the motion but shortened the radius to avoid overtaking him. They moved like two dancers learning new choreography, testing steps, adjusting tempo, syncing breath. Halfway through the session, something remarkable happened. Buddy froze mid-run, his body tight, tail rigid. It wasn't fear, it was a signal. And Leo understood instantly. He stopped, completely. No hesitation this time, no moment of confusion, just immediate respect for the warning in Buddy's posture. Buddy relaxed, looked back at him, and barked once, approval. Zoe gasped. "They're creating their own stop command." Ethan exhaled. "This is extraordinary. It's communication on purpose." Grace didn't answer first. Her chest tightened with a quiet awe, the kind that reminded her why she had devoted her life to this work. They finally said, "They're not just overcoming instinct, they're negotiating it." Later that afternoon, as the heat settled into a drowsy stillness, something new emerged from their interactions, something Zoe immediately tried to capture on her phone. Buddy lay in the dirt, front paws stretched out, staring up at Leo with bright, eager eyes. Leo stood over him, gazing down with the patient calm that had become his new default. Then Buddy made a sound none of them had heard before, a quick, high-pitched two-note chirp. Leo responded with a short, breathy rumble. Then Buddy repeated the chirp. Leo answered with the same rumble. Back and forth. Chirp. Rumble. Chirp. Rumble. Zoe whispered, "They're talking." Grace shook her head slowly. "No, they're practicing." Ethan blinked. "Practicing what?" "Agreement," Grace murmured. "They're checking in, confirming consent, making sure the other is ready." The exchange lasted nearly a full minute, and by the time it ended, both animals relaxed in perfect unison, Buddy rolling to his side, Leo lowering himself beside him with careful slowness. Daisy wandered over and lay down behind them, completing the familiar triangle the staff now recognized as their signature resting formation. Zoe filmed everything, and that night, she uploaded the clip with a simple caption, "This isn't instinct. This is language." The video exploded across the internet. People shared their own stories of unlikely friendships. Veterinarians commented with shock. Behaviorists debated in long threads what they were witnessing, but the overwhelming reaction was wonder, pure, unfiltered wonder. The world wasn't just watching a lion and a puppy grow up together. They were watching two different species build a bridge to meet in the middle. A few evenings later, Grace sat outside the cabin while Leo and Buddy dozed beside Daisy. She tried to write her weekly report, but her gaze kept drifting back to the sleeping trio. Buddy's head rested in the ruff of Leo's mane, and Leo's massive paw lay gently over Buddy's back. A breeze shifted the air. Leo's ear twitched. Buddy stirred. Then, in a warm whisper of sound, Leo gave that new rumble, soft, almost musical. Buddy responded with his chirp. Grace lowered her clipboard. They weren't dreaming. They were checking on each other. Again. A language, a system, a shared code built from trust and necessity. But just as Grace wrote the words, "progress beyond expectations," her stomach tightened with a familiar ache. The state's deadline loomed closer every week. And soon, far too soon, this language would be tested in ways none of them were ready for.
The warning came on a wind that tasted like dust and danger. Grace felt it before she saw anything, an instinctive tightening in her chest, the kind that came from years of reading the land as much as the animals. The desert had a way of whispering before it roared. That afternoon, the whispers grew loud. Storm clouds rolled in from the west, thick and bruised, swallowing the horizon. The forecast had predicted a mild front, nothing more. But Grace had lived long enough in Arizona to know the difference between projection and reality. This storm had teeth. Inside the yard, Leo and Buddy played their new imitation game. Buddy practicing his slow crouches, Leo mirroring him with exaggerated gentleness. Daisy watched them, tail thumping softly, while Zoe recorded from a few feet away. Grace stepped outside, squinting. "Zoe, bring them in." Zoe lowered her camera. "Is it the storm?" "It's moving faster than expected," Grace said. "Let's not risk it." Ethan jogged over from the barn. "Lightning tracker spiking. We've got maybe 15 minutes." But Mother Nature had different plans. A sharp crack tore through the sky, so sudden, so violent, that all three animals stiffened at once. Buddy barked, startled. Leo rose instantly, eyes wide, muscles tensing in a way Grace hadn't seen since before their accident recovery. The storm hit in a single, terrifying moment. Wind slammed against the fencing. Dust spiraled upward in a choking wave. Another bolt of lightning struck the ridge, so close it rattled the metal water trough. The animals panicked, not because they were wild, but because fear is universal. "Get them inside," Grace shouted. Zoe grabbed Daisy's harness and guided her toward the cabin. Ethan reached for Buddy, but the puppy backed away, trembling. And Leo, instinct clawed to the surface before he could stop it. Lightning cracked again. Buddy yelped. Leo roared. Not at Buddy, but at the storm, at the sky, at the raw fear ripping through him. Still, the sound shook Buddy, who bolted toward the far corner of the enclosure. Zoe tried to intercept him, but the wind kicked up a wall of sand that forced her to shield her face. "Buddy!" Ethan called, coughing. The pup whimpered, terrified and disoriented. Leo tried to follow, pushing against the rising panic inside him, but instinct and fear collided in a way that froze him mid-stride. His memory betrayed him. He knew what fear had made him do once, what fear could make him do again. His huge frame trembled violently, torn between two impossible urges, flee or protect. Buddy looked back at him, confused, hurt. Leo took one shaky step, then stopped, eyes wide, breath ragged. Grace saw it instantly. "He's afraid of himself," she whispered. The storm intensified, the world disappearing behind walls of dust and noise. Buddy let out a desperate bark, and Leo roared. This time not in fear, but in agony. He couldn't reach Buddy without fighting his own mind. He couldn't move forward without remembering the night he had hurt him. Lightning flashed. Thunder crashed. Buddy shrank down, shaking violently. Leo froze, panting, lost in a battle no one else could see. Grace made a decision. She pushed through the wind, grabbed Ethan's arm, and shouted, "Open the walkway gate, the one that leads straight into the medical corridor." Ethan hesitated. "Leo might—" "No," Grace said firmly. "Buddy needs him, and Leo needs Buddy to pull him out of this." Zoe, coughing through the dust, nodded. "Open it. Do it now." Ethan sprinted toward the secondary gate, fumbling with the lock in the rising storm. Grace stepped back into the yard and shouted through the chaos, "Leo, Buddy needs you. Look at him, sweetheart. Look at your brother."
Leo trembled, but slowly turned his head. Buddy wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was crying. Not barking, not calling, crying. That tiny broken sound cut through everything, the storm, the memories, the fear Leo had been drowning in. And in that instant, something inside him shifted. Not instinct, not training, recognition. He lowered his head and made their soft rumble. Not perfectly steady, but enough. Buddy whimpered back. Ethan yanked the gate open. Grace motioned with both hands. "Go, Leo! Take him inside!" Leo surged forward, not blindly, not wildly, but with purpose. He reached Buddy, nudged the trembling pup with his nose, and stood over him like a shield. Buddy pressed into his mane, trusting him without hesitation. Together, with Leo guiding Buddy and Buddy steadying Leo, they moved through the storm, step by careful step, until they crossed into the safety of the interior walkway. Zoe slammed the gate shut behind them. Ethan locked it. Grace exhaled for the first time in minutes. Inside the medical corridor, the light flickered once, but held. Leo collapsed onto the mat, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. Buddy curled immediately against him, nuzzling into his jaw, anchoring him back to calm. Daisy reached them last, leaning her old head against Leo's shoulder. Grace sank to the floor, her heart pounding. "They saved each other," she whispered. But Ethan, pale and shaken, said what she didn't want to acknowledge. "That wasn't just a scare. If the storm comes back harder next season, we might not be able to keep them together." Grace didn't answer. She couldn't, not while watching Leo and Buddy cling to each other in the worst moment they had faced since the accident. Not when the truth was finally becoming impossible to outrun.
Spring settled over Redstone like a soft blanket, warm and slow, as if the earth itself understood that the ranch needed time to breathe after the storm. Leo had grown into a breathtaking young lion, muscles sculpted, mane beginning its first golden bloom, eyes deeper and wiser than any wildcat his age should possess. Buddy, no longer a puppy but still carrying the same bright, earnest spirit, shadowed Leo's every step with a loyalty that felt almost spiritual. And Daisy, old, silvered, steady, watched them with the gentle pride of someone who knew she had poured her last years into shaping something extraordinary. But the calendar brought a weight no one could ignore. The 2-year review, the mandatory separation evaluation, the moment the state would decide whether this family could stay together or be torn apart. Grace barely slept the week before the inspection. She spent hours reviewing footage, rewriting reports, collecting data, anything that might convince the board that these boys were not a liability, but a miracle. Ethan and Zoe helped prepare the enclosure, making sure every detail reflected safety, structure, and the careful training that had defined Leo and Buddy's growth. Still, no document could truly capture who they were. Only the animals could do that. The evaluators arrived on a bright morning, clipboards in hand, expressions neutral, eyes sharp. They toured the yard first, then the medical corridor, then the feeding area. Everything was sterile, efficient, professional. But it wasn't them the evaluators had come to judge. It was the bond. Grace swallowed hard as she opened the gate to bring the inspectors to the observation area. Inside the yard, Leo stretched beneath the shade, while Buddy nudged Daisy's chin in a gentle greeting. All three lifted their heads as Grace approached. "Ready, boys?" she whispered. Buddy barked once. Leo gave their soft rumble, their language of reassurance. The evaluators stood behind the glass barrier. "Begin whenever you're ready," one said. Grace inhaled. "Okay, Leo. Buddy, show them." What unfolded in the next 10 minutes didn't feel like a demonstration. It felt like a story only animals could tell. Buddy began with the invitation crouch, the ritual that had once been clumsy but was now deliberate and graceful. Leo responded with his softened rumble. They circled each other, not in predation, not in dominance, but in a synchronized motion that mimicked play without chaos. Buddy gave his stop jerk. Leo halted instantly. Leo lowered his head and brushed Buddy's back with his nose. Buddy leaned up and bumped Leo's jaw. Then, without cue or command, Buddy slid into their morning greeting pose, front paws extended, head low. Leo mirrored him, pressing his forehead to Buddy's for one long, breathtaking moment. The evaluators exchanged looks, quiet, stunned, uncertain. Grace held her breath. Ethan quietly murmured, "They're showing them trust." "And restraint," Zoe whispered, eyes shining. "And choice." The session ended with Buddy settling underneath Leo's mane and Leo curling his tail around the puppy, an embrace no training manual could explain. There was silence in the observation room when Grace closed the gate. No one spoke for nearly 15 seconds. Finally, the lead evaluator said, "We need time to review the full documentation." Grace nodded politely, but her stomach twisted as the evaluators walked away. Hope was fragile. Hope could shatter. The decision arrived 3 days later. A plain envelope, a single page, a line of text that made Grace's breath stall in her chest. Ethan stepped behind her. "What does it say?" Grace read it twice, her hands trembling. Then she looked up at him with tears pooling in her eyes, tears of disbelief, relief, and pure gratitude. They denied full release, but they approved continued cohabitation under supervised conditions. They're letting them stay together. Ethan exhaled a shaking breath. They did it! Zoe didn't wait for permission. She sprinted across the yard shouting, "They're staying together!" The boys heard her before anyone else did. Buddy ran first, circling Zoe wildly. Leo followed with a bounding stride that shook the dust beneath him. Daisy, dear old Daisy, trotted out behind them, tail wagging with the dignity only age can bring. Grace walked into the yard, heart full, and knelt beside Leo. He lowered his enormous head until it pressed against her shoulder. Buddy wedged himself in next, tail thumping hard enough to stir the dust. Daisy leaned her weight into all three of them. For a long moment they stayed like that. One impossible, improbable family. The sun dipped toward the horizon. Evening painted the desert gold. And as Leo and Buddy settled into their familiar sunset formation, Leo sitting tall, Buddy tucked against his side, Daisy behind them, forming the backbone of their triangle, Grace realized something profound. This wasn't just companionship. This wasn't just survival. This was the story of two lives that had chosen each other every day, despite fear, instinct, and nature itself. Two beings born into different worlds that had built something stronger than biology. A lion who found his heart in a dog who found his courage in a lion, a family that found meaning in each other. As dusk deepened, Leo gave his soft rumble. Buddy answered with his chimp, and Daisy added her warm, steady woof. 3 voices, 3 species, 1 bond. 2 years of wonder, and a lifetime still ahead.